Welcome to the Tough Decisions Network for Entrepreneurs. I'm Dan Handford, and my wife, Dennae, and I interview successful people sharing stories behind tough decisions that they've had to make along their journey as an entrepreneur.
On the podcast with us today is Dov Baron. Dov, thank you very much for joining us.
My absolute pleasure. I'm honored to be here to serve you and your audience.
I want you to get us started, Dov, by talking to us about what your background is as an entrepreneur. And I know you have quite the depth of background, but just a kind of a brief overview of your background as an entrepreneur and then where your current focus is right now.
Yeah, well, as you said, it's a big in-depth story, but the shortened Reader's Digest version is that I think my first dive into the entrepreneurial world was at about almost 16. I was 15 when I first started my first business, and continued on from that to start businesses and run businesses in 3 continents, in the UK, in North America, and in Australia, in all kinds of things. But then in 1984, walked away from the business that I'd been in the industry that I'd been in for about 12 years at that time, and was very successful at it. Started out in a new career, which was related to speaking, which is what I do now and have done for 34 years, speaking and teaching. And I've gone on from there to speak and teach all over the world and work with leaders and entrepreneurs and executives and athletes and celebrities, etc., privately, but also independently with companies and organizations, and helping them become purpose-driven individuals and purpose-driven organizations. So that's kind of the quick Reader's Digest version.
Well, and I'm sure that as you've gone through this journey, you've had quite the level of tough decisions that you've had to make along the way. I know as entrepreneurs, we make them every day, but I like to start us off by talking about a tough decision that is what I call a sore thumb tough decision. So it's a tough decision that when you sit down and have a cup of coffee with somebody and they say, hey, what's the worst decision? Not necessarily the worst decision, but what's the decision that you made that had the worst outcome or the not so good outcome? But you're glad you went through it, though, because you learned a lot of lessons about, what to do and what not to do, and it kind of has shaped you the way you are today. So can you share that tough decision with us?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking. So first of all, there's a presupposition you put in there that I'm glad I went through it. I'm not glad I went through it all. It was stupid. And it's something that I guide people away from all the time. See, we've got this idea, and we're told this idea all the time, that we should burn the ships, burn the bridge, all that kind of stuff. And, I love the concept, but do not burn your bridge or your ships until you are fully prepared, at least prepared enough. So my dumbass decision was back in 84. As I said, I was in a different industry. I had a business. I was making, so think about this, money doubles every decade. I was making about $1,800 to $2,000 a week in 1984. So if you double that, that's a lot of money by today. And I had been in this industry. We were doing very well. I was very successful. But while I'd been in that industry, I'd continued to study what it is that I do now. So I'd studied psychology, leadership, philosophy, quantum physics, metaphysical studies, all these different areas that I was fascinated with. And in the industry I was in, I was bored out of my mind. Really good, doing well, but bored out of my coconut. And one day I went into work and I said to my business partner, this is where the dumb decision comes, said to my business partner, I'm done. Like, he knew I was bored. We'd talked for a long time. And he was my best friend too. So, it wasn't anything that was a surprise. And he says, yeah, well, I know you're done, but, you can stick around. And I go, no, I have to walk away. And I handed the business entirely over to him. And he said, well, just work here like 2-3 days a month and we'll still be 50-50 partners. And I said, no. And I walked away with nothing in my pocket and started my new business and went out on the road as a speaker, traveling in Australia, doing 2 national tours, and almost went bankrupt, very, very close to bankrupt, because I burned the ships, I burned the bridge before I was even close to ready. I was so impassioned, and passion is a definite trap for entrepreneurs. I was so impassioned that I threw the baby out with the bathwater, and that was a terrible decision. So what I say to entrepreneurs when I'm working with them is this: Yes, you need to burn the ships. Yes, you need to burn the bridge so you don't turn back. It's important. But make sure there's something on the other side of that bridge first. See, I could have easily had a healthy financial bridge by just being part-time in the other business and keeping my financial coffers open, but I didn't. That was a dumb decision.
So what would you advise, are the key indicators or things that people should look for before they move on to something new like that? Let's say they are bored and they're ready to do something and they have a passion about a certain thing, but how do you know when you're ready to just burn that bridge and move on?
Well, first of all, I think passion is a trap, and I can talk to you about that in a moment. But the bottom line is, at a very simple level, is simply this: how much does it cost to cover your nut? So, what is it you have to cover every single month, and what is the minimum amount for that? And I think you should burn the bridge when you get to the minimum amount, not to the full amount, not to the comfortable amount, but to the minimum amount. So, if you need 10 grand a month to survive, and that is your bare minimum, then you can burn the bridge at 10, because that will still keep enough fire in you to go, this is not a great life, and I really have to push it here. If you wait till it's 15, you've lost some of the fire. So human beings are driven by two primary forces. We're driven by pleasure and pain. We're driven by pleasure and gain, and pain and loss. However, pain and loss is a far greater driver. Pleasure will drive you short term, but pain will drive you long term. You have to keep that pain close to you. That's why you burn the bridge when you get to the minimum amount you need every month from the new thing to just get you over the line. And then you've got to go, okay, we got to definitely up level this.
I think that's very important, because I was just this past weekend, I was at an event in Dallas, Texas, and I was talking to somebody about, somebody famous who always talks and touts about burning the bridges. And, I basically said that was one of the reasons why I disagree with that national, speaker or whatever. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't because, I disagreed with everything that they said. It was that, their philosophy is no matter where you are, whether you're single, you're married or whatever, just stop what you're doing and go with what you really want to do. And I think that balance is very important. That's what I talk about a lot is that, yes, burn the bridges, but put that plan into place before you burn those bridges to make sure that you're actually covered. And I like what you said, though. You kind of leveled it up a little bit and said, don't plan to the point where you're comfortable. Plan to the point where you're at the minimum point to meet your necessities, so that you constantly have that fire to allow you to continue to be successful.
Mm-hmm. And as I said, part of the trap is passion. And you can hear it. I'm a very passionate guy. But passion is a trap, and we've heard this thing, follow your passion and the money will follow, blah, blah, blah. Here's the truth, and I want everybody to get this. So I'm going to give you an example that is a little graphic, if that's okay, and if it's not, you got to tell me now. I won't swear, although I do. I won't swear, but I will tell you that this is just to make it real for people. And it's this. So simple question. Right now, if you are a heterosexual male, I'm assuming somebody is who's listening, but maybe you are, Dan, I don't know, and there's no judgment on that. But if you are, then you can remember what you were passionate about in between the ages of 15 and 19. What was all-consuming passion to you at that age? I know what it was, because it was the same for me, and it was the same for every heterosexual male, right? It was females, right? So if we were supposed to follow our passion, and our passion was a career, why aren't we all gynecologists? Right?
I can answer that in a couple of different ways, but
exactly. But the point is that passion is transitory. Mm-hmm. It is transitory. And one of the things, and this is why it's important, why I want to bring this up here for entrepreneurs, is because entrepreneurs are very passionate people, and they tend to jump ship a lot and move to the next passion. Who gives a crap? Your passion is transitory. It's not your purpose. Your purpose and your passion are vastly different things. I have a course that I teach on this. There's a live online course. That your passion is transitory. You've got to grasp that. What will actually keep you moving in the right direction is finding your purpose. And so a lot of time entrepreneurs go, I'm ADD, and my passion goes all over the place. I was doing this, then I stopped, and then went and did that. And I hear this from a lot of the entrepreneurs that I work with. And I go, your passion doesn't matter. It's simply a transportation. It's what you're looking for inside of it. And so if you think about it, the passion is the vehicle that transports your purpose. When the vehicle runs out of fuel or the vehicle breaks down, you move the purpose to another vehicle. That's okay. But if you don't know why you're moving vehicles, that's the problem. So you've got to find your purpose first. And it was fascinating to me that when I began to understand that many years later, I realized the reason I was in the first industry was exactly the same reason I was in the second industry. But now I could drive myself forward from a place of purpose.
Well, let's shift here a little bit, Dov, and go through the next tough decision that you've had to face that had a really good and positive outcome and some of the lessons that you learned through that one.
Thank you. Well, it's interesting because that one goes the opposite way. June 1990, I was incredibly successful. I was speaking all over the world. I was booked months and months in advance. I was more financially successful than I'd ever been. I had a nice car, big house, all the usual stuff that we think is important. And at that time, I was an adrenaline junkie, meaning I was mainlining doing dangerous things. And in June 1990, I decided that I got a couple of days off and went to a place called Brandywine Falls, which is up by Whistler, where the Winter Olympics was held. So you can imagine this beautiful place, magnificent. And at Brandywine Falls, the glacial water runs down this twisted, windy river, and then it plummets off a cliff for 200 feet. It's magnificent. It's beautiful. And my buddy and I went to see it, and then we decided to jump off the trail and hike down to the bottom so we could get to the bottom of where the waterfall was. And I challenged my buddy to go behind the waterfall, again, adrenaline junkie. And we scrambled over these wet, slippery rocks into a 70-mile-an-hour spray and got behind the waterfall. And when I came out on the other side, I felt like Superman. I felt totally invigorated, like I was unstoppable. Nothing could stop me. And when I came out on the other side, I said to my buddy, let's not hike back. And he goes, well, how else are we going to get out? And I said, let's climb the face. Now, if anybody knows anything about mountain climbing, people think, well, that's a dangerous sport. Well, it's actually not, because you have ropes, you have harnesses, you have safety lines, you have the right footwear, right clothing, etc. Free climbing, you don't have any of those things, but you have the right clothing and the right footwear. Free climbing while you're wet with the wrong shoes on and the wrong clothes on is completely and totally, absolutely insane.
Wow.
I know, because that's what I did. And at about 120 feet, which if you're not sure what that is, that's about 12 stories up, I reached for a rock that dislodged a bigger rock that hit me in the face and sent me hurtling down at maximum velocity on the boulders below. Not on rocks, not on shale, not on grass, but onto boulders. And I landed on my head. I got smashed to pieces. Now, I can go into the details, which are very gory, and there's no point of it, of that recovery. Needless to say, I left the physical plane 5 times. I was dead 5 times in the next day or two. And it was a pretty rough ride. The interesting thing about it, though, was that when people would ask me, how you doing? My answer would always be, I'm great. I'm coming back. Meanwhile, my jaw was wired closed. And I would always put on this bravado because I was born in a ghetto. I was a leader. I had the right psychology. Nothing was going to get me down. I was an ex-boxer, ex-martial artist. I was not going to admit defeat. But the truth was, inside, I was completely defeated. It was about 9 months in, and I began to believe that I couldn't laugh. I didn't find anything playful or funny. All the things that made me laugh didn't. I was in a very dark place. And I had a night out with my boys, with my mates, and we had this great night out, and I'd actually laughed. And I was in a great mood, and I began to feel hope again about having joy in my life. And as I walked through the door, I opened the door, and across the kitchen, I could see garbage festooned everywhere. Empty cans, coffee grinds, meat wrappers. It was stinky. There was cat litter. It was just terrible. And I knew exactly who the culprit was. And I went from being completely full of joy to being completely full of rage. Not anger, but rage. Marching through the house, trying to find the culprit. And when I got into the living room, the culprit was right there, curled up all nice and cozy on the couch. And I lifted my hand, in truth, shamefully, to strike the cat, who I know had done that. And somewhere about halfway down, from my hand being in the air, something stopped me, and I gently touched the cat, and the cat was cold. And I scooped him up in my arms, and I realized he was dead. And I fell to my knees and began to weep. And it was interesting because I was not very more than a few minutes of weeping and realized, why am I crying for a cat I didn't like? I didn't like this cat. The cat was given to me. I didn't want it. I was like, why am I crying for a cat I didn't like? This is weird. And I realized I was not crying for the cat. I was crying for the life that is dead, that I had lived. And it was at that point that I had to make a decision. And the decision was, can I go on? I felt suicidal. I wanted to die. I didn't see any reason to go on. One side of me was saying, I'm coming back. Well, I realized that wasn't true. There is no back in life. Life is an evolution. It only moves forward. The other part of me felt like, well, I could just stay here. I can stay in this place of feeling like a victim. I have every reason to say, I gave it all my best, but it's not my fault. I fell off the mountain. And that was so tempting to just stay there. And the third part of me was to find my purpose. And that was terrifying, but I knew I had to do it. And that was the moment I decided to live my purpose. That is what's driven me every day since then. What drives me is that purpose that I began to search for over the next, again, about another 9 months digging into that. And I've developed an entire process for people to get there now in several hours, but it took me about 9 months personally and a lot of pain. But that was definitely the greatest decision that came out of a terrible decision, which was to free climb that wet rock.
Sure. Well, that's a great story with a great outcome. And it's also great that you can now share that with other people and walk them through it without the difficulty, of course, that you had to face.
Yeah, I don't wish that on anybody.
Right, exactly. Could you share some of the strategies that you like to use when you are facing a tough decision?
Absolutely. And there are many that I use, but the bottom line is it all comes down to whatever the decision is this aligned with my purpose? But again, I want to be clear. Your mission is not your purpose. Your passion is not your purpose. Your purpose is your purpose. And until you know what your purpose is, decisions will be pulled by pain. They'll be pulled by the pain of the moment, i.e. I got to pay the bills, or, I'm under pressure with this or that. You're going to be pulled by your passion. This is exciting. I could do this. But the question is this aligned with my purpose? If I had to die, if doing this decision and I chose to do this, and as a result of choosing to do this, and they put this on my gravestone, would this represent me and why I came to the planet? That is my purpose. And if it doesn't align with that, I'm not doing it. And, I get 50 opportunities a week. I mean, it's insane the amount of stuff that comes at me. And I have to say, does this align with my purpose? So every decision goes through the purpose filter.
All right. We are going to take a quick break and hear from one of our show sponsors. When we come back, we'll talk to Dov about his favorites as it relates to his life as an entrepreneur.
Have you ever thought about investing in real estate, but find yourself so busy that you don't have time for it? Do you have FOMO, which is the fear of missing out? At HanfordCapital.com, we help investors with passive real estate investments that project better returns than traditional investment vehicles such as the stock market. If you'd like to find out more about our passive real estate investments, visit HanfordCapital.com. That's HANDFORD Capital.com. We will jump on a call with you to discuss your investment goals and to see if our investments are a good fit for you. This advertisement is not to be construed as an offer or recommendation to buy or sell a security. Visit HanfordCapital.com.
And we are back with Dov Baron. Dov, I want you to start us off with a series of quick question answers that we call the trifecta, with giving us your favorite technology that you use in business that helps make your life easier every day.
My favorite technology is my team. What I mean by that is, many years ago, I met Tony Robbins in person back in '89, and he asked me who was on my team, and I had no idea what the hell he was talking about. And he explained to me that you'll never make it without a team, and that nobody does it alone. And my team all has the technology, so I'd really love Slack as a technology because it allows me to communicate with my team who are actually all over the world. I love that tech. So that is really great for me. I also love BeLive because I do a lot of live video, and that's a technology that I find is a great way for entrepreneurs to connect with your audience in a very real way. So BeLive, which is a broadcast platform that you can use to do live interface through Facebook with your viewers, with your audience right there. And there's nothing ever going to do better than you having a direct connection. And that's the technology you can leverage to do that. And of course, I love podcasting for that same thing.
What's a favorite quote that you've heard that has helped you as an entrepreneur?
You know, I looked over the notes around that question, and I really struggled with that because I've got about 10,000 quotes running around in my head at any single moment. But, you know, one of my favorite quotes that reminds me all the time is actually nothing to do with business, but everything to do with business. It comes from Richard Bach, and it is, argue for your limitations, and sure enough, they are yours. Most people are arguing for their limitations. They're saying, why this, you know, I can't do this because. Mm-hmm. And when they argue for those limitations, they become real.
Mm-hmm. That's true. I've never thought about that, and I haven't heard that, but that's very true. What's a favorite book that has helped you make better decisions as an entrepreneur?
Again, many, many books that I would recommend. But, you know, I think that you've got to, if you're making a decision as an entrepreneur, if you're going to look at books to help you with, there's all kinds of great books. You know, there's The 4-Hour Workweek, which is a great book. There's Good to Great, which is a fabulous book. I believe that the best book to help you with as to be an entrepreneur is a book that allows or shows you how to be integral with yourself, with your purpose in what it is that you're doing as an entrepreneur, rather than just quote unquote making money. So my favorite book is my favorite book, period. And that is Khalil Gibran's The Prophet. It's a book of small poems, and people are like, what the hell, on an entrepreneur show? Yeah, on leadership shows, I talk about it too, because, you know, it tells me what friendship is. It tells me what work is. And I ask myself these questions all the time. You know, work is love made manifest, it says in that book. And I love that. I just love that. So it reminds me, if I'm working at something, yes, I understand there's a grind. I understand there's the hard part to get to the joy. But is this my love made manifest? Is this, because my purpose is my love, is this my love made manifest? Or is this me trying to be better than somebody else because there is no competition? So for me, you want to find a book that is aligned with the philosophy you want to live by and run your entrepreneurial business from that place, from your deepest philosophy rather than from your best technology.
Well, Dov, it's been a pleasure talking with you, and we really appreciate you sharing your insights with our audience. How can the listeners reach out to you if they're interested in finding out more about you or your businesses?
Thank you. I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to do that. You can find out more about me at fullmontyleadership.com. Fullmontyleadership.com is my main website. You can find my podcast on there, Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Podcast. You can find my blogs. There's over 500 blogs in there in my inner circle. All the different platforms, all the different courses. My books are all on there. You can also find me on YouTube, LinkedIn, Dov Baron. And here's the thing I want you to do. I'm going to give you the opportunity to reach out to me personally, dov@dovbaron.com. That's my email address for two reasons. One is I want you to write to me and tell me what you got out of this. And I want you to CC these guys on this. It's really important because they're putting this show together. You're bringing these great people to serve you and offer opportunity to you. Make sure you go to iTunes, rate, review, subscribe to the show, share the show with other people, and then write to these guys, right? Write to Dennae, write to Dan, write to me, CC me on it, and tell us what you got out of this and what you're going to do with it, because information is worth the hole in the donut. Transformation comes from application. Write to us, tell us what you're going to do with it, and you can write to me if I can help you personally. I certainly will. That's why I'm here on the planet. Again, fullmontyleadership.com.
Well, very good. We'll make sure all of those email addresses and links are on our show notes page. Dov, thank you. We wish you the best, and we look forward to talking with you again sometime in the future.
Thank you for having me on it. It's a pleasure to serve you.
Thank you for listening to the Tough Decisions Network. Be sure to visit toughdecisions.net to gain access to show notes for this episode and to join our free weekly entrepreneur email, where we will send you news about the latest technology for your business, inspiring quotes, and the latest books for entrepreneurs. That's toughdecisions.net.